I'm sorry, but this is a family event, Margaret Lancaster said, her designer suit and perfectly coiffed hair radiating smug authority as she blocked the church entrance. And you're simply not family. Behind her, guests in expensive attire filed past, throwing curious glances at our confrontation. My husband James stood frozen between us, caught between his controlling mother and his wife of 5 years. Mother, this is ridiculous, James started. Sarah is my wife. And this is your sister's wedding, Margaret cut him off. I won't have it disrupted by unnecessary additions to the guest list. Unnecessary. That's what she called me at every family event for the past 5 years. The unnecessary wife her precious son had married against her wishes. The unnecessary genetic counselor who hadn't come from the right social circle. The unnecessary witness to what I discovered in the couple's genetic screening results. Mrs. Lancaster, I kept my voice steady. As the hospital's chief genetic counselor, I really need to speak with Jessica and Michael before. Before nothing, she snapped. I won't have you inventing some medical drama to ruin my daughter's perfect day. The pre-marriage screening was completed weeks ago. Yes, it was. And that's exactly why I was here. James, his mother turned to him. Surely you understand this is a private family celebration. Perhaps Sarah could wait at home. Home, where I'd spent the last 3 nights staring at test results that would shatter this perfect wedding. Results showing that the happy couple share far more than wedding vows. They shared DNA. Actually, I pulled an envelope from my bag. This concerns Michael's adoption records. Margaret moved faster than I'd ever seen her, manicured hands snatching the envelope. How dare you? Michael's adoption is sealed. His past is none of your business. But it was her past. The baby boy she'd given up 30 years ago during her first marriage. The son she'd never told her current family about. The child who'd grown up to fall in love with his own sister. The genetic screening showed some concerning markers. I tried again. As their counselor, I'm legally obligated. You're legally nothing to this family, Margaret hissed. James, control your wife. James looked torn, years of maternal manipulation warring with his instincts. Sarah wouldn't be here without a reason, Mother. Her reason is obvious, to embarrass us, like she always does. Margaret's perfect mask slipped slightly. She's jealous of Jessica's happiness, trying to ruin her special day with more of her common drama. Through the church doors, I could see Jessica in her wedding gown, radiant as she prepared to marry the man who was unknowingly her brother. Michael stood at the altar, handsome in his tuxedo, showing the same aristocratic features as his biological mother who was now blocking my path. Mrs. Lancaster, I lowered my voice. There are serious medical implications. The only serious implication, she stepped closer, is what will happen to your marriage if you don't leave immediately. James understands the importance of family loyalty, don't you, darling? I watched my husband struggle, years of conditioning visible in his hesitation. But this time, I couldn't back down. Not with what I knew. The ceremony starts in 10 minutes, Margaret smiled triumphantly. James, escort your wife home. She's clearly not feeling well. Not feeling well? I laughed softly. No, I'm feeling perfectly clear-headed. Clear enough to recognize your features in Michael's face. The same features Jessica has. Clear enough to understand why their genetic screening showed markers that should be impossible, unless they share a parent. Margaret's perfectly controlled facade cracked, just slightly. You're delusional. DNA doesn't lie, I said quietly. But you did. To your family, to your children, and now you're about to let them commit. James, Margaret's voice rose sharply. Remove your wife from these premises immediately. But James was staring at Michael through the church doors, really looking at him perhaps for the first time. Mother, he does look like Jessica. This is absurd. Margaret's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed her already perfect jacket. Michael's adoption records are sealed. You couldn't possibly. Genetic counselors have access to medical databases for exactly these situations. I pulled out another envelope. When the initial screening showed concerning markers, I was legally required to investigate. Did you think changing his birth date would be enough to hide it? Through the church doors, the wedding planner was starting to line up the bridal party. Jessica's bridesmaids, all wearing the exact shade of blue Margaret had insisted upon, gathered around the bride. None of them knew they were about to witness something very different from a wedding. Whatever you think you know, Margaret's voice dropped to a threatening whisper. Consider very carefully what accusations like this will do to your marriage. I've considered everything. I met her gaze steadily, including what will happen if they marry, have children, and those children suffer the genetic consequences of consanguinity. How long did you think you could keep this secret? James moved closer, his face pale. Mother, what is she talking about? Nothing, darling. Your wife is simply trying to cause trouble, as usual. Like I caused trouble when I questioned those investment opportunities you push on James' clients? I asked quietly. The ones that mysteriously collapse after you withdrew your own money. Margaret's perfect mask slipped further. She'd never forgiven me for protecting James's financial planning clients from her schemes. She'd spent years trying to convince him I was destroying family unity by questioning her business practices. This is different, she hissed. This is my daughter's wedding. To her brother. I finished. Your son. Born March 15th, 1993, at St. Mary's Hospital. Given up for adoption through Catholic Charities. Ring any bells? The color drained from Margaret's face. How did you? DNA doesn't lie, I repeated. And genetic markers don't care about sealed records. When a screening showed impossible similarities, I ran additional tests. Would you like to see the results? They're quite conclusive. Inside the church, the wedding coordinator was giving final instructions to the bridal party. In 5 minutes, they would start the processional. In 5 minutes, Jessica would walk down the aisle toward her own brother. James, Margaret turned desperately to her son. You can't believe these ridiculous accusations. Your wife is trying to destroy our family. By preventing genetic catastrophe, I interrupted. By stopping a brother and sister from unknowingly committing incest. Yes, how destructive of me. James was staring at his mother, really seeing her perhaps for the first time. The timing, this would have been during your first marriage. Before you met Dad. Ancient history, Margaret waved dismissively, but her perfect confidence was cracking, and completely irrelevant to today's celebration. Relevant to the bride and groom sharing 50% of their DNA, I pulled out the test results. Relevant to any children they might have. Relevant to the fact that you've known this whole time and said nothing. The wedding march began to play softly, a practice run for the ceremony. Through the doors, I could see Jessica beaming as she prepared to marry the man she didn't know was her brother. Think very carefully, Margaret's voice shook slightly, about what these accusations will do to this family. I have thought about it. I met her gaze. I've thought about Jessica and Michael's right to know the truth, about the children they might have, about the fact that you're willing to let them commit incest to protect your secret. James took the test results from my hand, his face growing paler as he read. Mother, is this true? Of course not, but her denial lacked conviction. Your wife clearly fabricated. Like I fabricated the investment fraud evidence, I asked quietly, the documentation you couldn't explain away. Tell me, Margaret, how many secrets are you willing to sacrifice your children to keep? The wedding coordinator appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Lancaster, we're ready to begin. Margaret straightened her spine, years of social training taking over. Wonderful. My daughter's wedding will proceed exactly as planned. No, James's voice was firm. It won't. James, darling. Either you tell them, he said quietly, or we will. 1 year later, I sat in my office reviewing genetic screening files, a photo of Jessica and Michael on my desk. Not as bride and groom, but as the brother and sister they discovered themselves to be that day at the church. The support group is helping, James said from the doorway, bringing coffee. Jessica says knowing the truth was better than living a lie, even if the truth hurt. The siblings had spent the past year rebuilding their relationship on honest ground. The romantic love had transformed into family bonds, stronger perhaps for having survived Margaret's deception. Michael found his birth father. I touched the latest update. A professor in Vermont. They're meeting next week. Turns out he never knew about the pregnancy. Margaret's web of lies had unraveled spectacularly after the wedding that wasn't it. Her first husband had been devastated to learn of the son she'd hidden from him. The adopted parents had been horrified to discover she deliberately concealed information that could have prevented the near tragedy. The ethics board finished their investigation. James added quietly, they're using our case as a teaching example for genetic counselors about the importance of following up on concerning markers, no matter the social consequences. My professional reputation had emerged stronger, my actions protecting both medical ethics and family futures. Margaret's attempts to paint me as a troublemaker had backfired completely. Jessica's starting law school in the fall. I smiled at the acceptance letter on my desk, focusing on adoption rights and medical disclosure laws, making something positive from all this. Michael had found his calling too, working with adoption agencies to improve their genetic screening protocols. The siblings had transformed their pain into purpose, their near tragedy into triumph. Mother's still not speaking to us, James sighed. She's living with her sister in Palm Beach, telling everyone we betrayed the family. She betrayed the family, I corrected gently. We saved it. The investigation had revealed more of Margaret's secrets, other adopted children she'd hidden from their birth fathers, other families she'd nearly destroyed protecting her carefully crafted image. The foundation is doing well, James mentioned. Jessica and Michael are using their wedding fund to help other adoptees access genetic screening, making sure no other siblings find out the truth too late. The Lancaster Family Foundation for Genetic Truth, they'd named it. A legacy of honesty rising from decades of deception. Their birth father wants to contribute. I showed James the email. Says preventing other families from facing similar situations is the best way to heal from what Margaret did. The man Margaret had hidden Michael from for 30 years was now building relationships with both his children. Another family truth emerging from Margaret's lies. Sometimes I wonder, James said softly, how many other secrets she's keeping, how many other lives she's affected with her deceptions. We'll never know all of them. I touched the genetic screening results that had started everything. But we stopped this one, prevented this tragedy. Through my office window, I could see Jessica and Michael arriving for their weekly lunch, no longer romantic partners, but family in the truest sense, bound by blood, truth, and survival. They're happy, James observed. A different kind of happy than they planned, but real. Real is better than perfect, I replied, remembering Margaret's obsession with appearances. Truth is better than lovely lies. The siblings waved up at us, their smiles genuine now, unburdened by unwitting taboo. They'd lost a wedding but gained a family, lost a romance but found themselves. The Genetic Counseling Conference wants us to present next month. I gathered my files to share how standard screening protocols can reveal critical family information. Mother would hate that. James smiled slightly, using her perfect scandal as a teaching moment. Perfect scandals make the best lessons. I stood watching Jessica and Michael enter the building, especially when they prevent future tragedies. We headed down to meet them, leaving Margaret's world of beautiful deceptions behind. Sometimes the ugliest truths create the most beautiful futures, if you're brave enough to speak them.